The Graziadillo School of Business and Management at Pepperdine University proudly presents the Dean's Executive Leadership Series. This podcast invites top business practitioners and thought leaders to share their view on the real world of business.
My name is Faye McClure, and I am a proud graduate of Seaver College and a member of the Board of Visitors for the Graziadillo School of Business. I am also a Vice President of Strategic Marketing for Farmers Insurance, and I'm very proud to announce that Farmers, once again, is serving as a presenting sponsor for the Dean's Executive Leadership Series. Thank you. This is an honor that we've had since inception for the last 6 years. But you know, the Farmers' relationship with Pepperdine goes back way beyond the Dells. It started with our founder, John C. Tyler, many, many years ago, when he was one of the major benefactors for Pepperdine University. Now, the Dean's Executive Leadership Series has had amazing speakers throughout the years. People like Brian Moynihan of Bank of America, David Murdoch from Dole Foods, Disney's and Sweeney, and then finally J.D. Power III. And this year's series of speakers proves to be very exciting and certainly just as informative. We very much look forward to hearing him. Tonight is my pleasure to introduce a trailblazer and a true leader in my eyes, someone who's a dear friend, the Dean of the Graziadillo School of Business, Dr. Linda Livingstone.
Well, good evening. It is so good to have you here for our first event of the year for the Dean's Executive Leadership Series. And Faye, thank you for the introduction. And once again, thank you and Farmers for sponsoring our series this year. It is a fabulous partnership, as you said, that goes back many, many years at Pepperdine. And we have John Tyler Drive on the Malibu campus that sort of represents that partnership. But we have a fabulous series planned this year. We have sort of a little bit of a quasi-sports theme going, as you can see with the beginning of our video. So we've got several folks that are into health and wellness and sports, and so we're going to have a fabulous year and hear some really amazing speakers. Before I introduce our speaker tonight, I do want to update you a little bit on some of the things going on in the school. It has been a while since we've been together. Our last event was in May, and so a lot has happened in that period of time. What I really wanted to share with you tonight just briefly was some of the things that we've been doing in the last couple of months, as well as some of the things that are coming up that really show how we're partnering with the business community to enhance the educational experience for our students and alumni, and really also to add value back to the business community. Just last week, our information systems faculty and our Center for Applied Research hosted a conference titled Information Systems to Innovation Systems. We had about 80 people there, academics as well as business leaders, really talking about how we integrate and help one another to become more effective in that space. Fabulous event on the Malibu campus that was extremely successful. You can also go online to our website. We have started a new publication. It's an online publication called Entrepreneur Zine Launch, and it features many of our students and alumni who are doing entrepreneurial kinds of activities. It's a really fascinating way to see what some of our people are doing and to learn more about some of the entrepreneurial tips and insights that they have based on their experience. And it's very appropriate given the growth we've seen in our entrepreneurship emphasis in our various programs. And then we've also launched a Master of Science in Entrepreneurship program that really kicks off officially in January. So that's a wonderful opportunity if you know folks that might be interested in really having a specialized niche emphasis in the entrepreneurship area. And then just last week at our Board of Visitors meeting, we hosted a project we call 15X, and it is where we really think about how we help commercialize technologies in a lot of creative and innovative ways. And again, we had about 80 people there brainstorming ideas around a very interesting technology, business people, people on our board. It was just a fabulous opportunity and lots of energy and excitement in the room. So we've got a lot of exciting things going on in that entrepreneurship space that we look forward to building out even more in the months and years that are ahead. Coming up on November 4th, we are hosting our annual McGill Business Symposium, and this year it always has a social emphasis and ethics emphasis, and this year we are bringing our new SEER certificate, the Social, Environmental, and Ethical Responsibility Program, together with our entrepreneurship program. And we're looking at how some entrepreneurs have done interesting things in the socially responsible space. We're going to have the CEO of Patagonia there, Casey Sheehan. Kathleen Rogers, who's the president of the Global Earth Day Network, will be there, as well as several other entrepreneurs. So I know many of our students will be there. We certainly invite you to join us on November 4th at the Drescher Graduate Campus in Malibu. And then our private capital markets project that we are very proud of, that really looks at what's happening in the private capital market space, particularly from a financial perspective. The most recent survey will be coming out within the next couple of weeks, somewhere around the 1st of November. This year, we actually partnered with Dun & Bradstreet Credibility Corporation, so we sent the survey this year to 2.6 million business owners. We've gotten over 17,000 responses from across the country, so it's going to be a very, very robust and rich survey, even beyond what we've done in the past. So if that's a space that you're particularly interested in, watch for that. It will be some really interesting and insightful data that we think will be very important in regard to what's going on with private capital markets. Lots going on. We are excited to tell you about it. Pay attention to our website so that you can keep on top of the most current things coming out of the school. We also encourage you, especially with some of the new programs we rolled out and the exceptional opportunities we have in our MBA programs. If you know of folks that you think would be a good fit at Pepperdine, let us know, whether it's for the Grazia Dio School or any other schools at Pepperdine. We find that the prospective students who are recommended to us by alumni and students are actually some of our best students and really great fits with the university. So we certainly encourage you to do that. And then finally, how many students do we have in the room? Current students. They actually had a couple days off in the full-time program, and they're still here. I'm really proud of them. So all of them are looking for jobs, and they're looking for internships. So look for them, help them. One of the things we talk a lot about is waves, hiring waves. So if you have internship opportunities, if you have job opportunities, look to your fellow alums and fellow students for that. That is hugely important to us. But the reason we're here tonight is to hear our speaker, Richard Goudis. We are so excited to have Richard with us. I actually did the podcast interview with him before. It was quite interesting and insightful. I know we're going to learn a lot from him tonight that will be very interesting to you. But Richard is the Chief Operating Officer at Herbalife. He joined the firm in 2004 as the Chief Financial Officer. He will tell you a lot more about Herbalife, but it is a global nutrition, weight loss, and skincare company. They've been growing very rapidly in recent years and doing some really interesting things worldwide. Richard, I learned when we met earlier, actually was a wrestler in college. And I went to Oklahoma State University as an undergrad, and Oklahoma State actually has one of the best wrestling programs in the country and has for many, many years. We have, I don't even know how many national championship banners in the gym. But one thing I know from my days as a basketball player at Oklahoma State is that the wrestlers were like crazy people at our university. They were the most insane athletes on the entire campus. And they worked harder than anybody. They were more intense than anybody else. So I have no doubt that part of your success and part of what drives you must have come from those years as a wrestler at UMass. So we'll look forward to hearing about what's going on at Herbalife and some of the interesting things that you're doing. But join me in welcoming Richard Goudis.
Thank you. So about, 9 months, a year ago, I was approached by a friend, and she asked, would I want to speak here? And my first reaction is, why me, right? Who would want to hear my story? We have this dynamic CEO that would blow this room and all the people upstairs away. Why me? And it was something I had said to her sort of inadvertently that caught her ear. Kay Rosen and I were chatting one day, and I'd just come back from China, and she goes, "Oh, well, how long were you there?" I said, "Not even 24 hours." And she wanted to understand that story, and it was a personal story of going to help a situation. And she says, "Oh boy, we need to hear about that story." So kind of break this presentation into a few segments, and I'll make it very personal, and we'll end with the Herbalife story and the turnaround and a lot of the success. But in case you fade out, okay, the Herbalife story, we went public in December of 2004 at $7. Today we're about $55, so about 8x. Only Google is really close to us. So if you want, you got to stay to the end and listen, and we'll tell you actually how to do that, okay? But I started with the presentation, right? I'm a PowerPoint guy, so I started with the presentation, I put my notes together, and then I kind of got it in my brain. I'm like, okay, well, I saw the venue, I really can't do that. So I sat upstairs and I put some notes together, figuring I'd just do some cue cards. And then in come a bunch of colleagues from Herbalife, and I said, oh, I can't use any of this now. They know all this stuff, right? They know these stories, and I can't use these stories, so I'm just going to wing it, okay? But so in keeping with the sports theme, okay, and this is one of the great ones. So people often ask me, well, Rich, how'd you get to this level? How'd you get that? Or how'd you do this? And I used to always say, I consider myself really lucky. Today, I've grown in my faith a little more. Now I say I'm very blessed, right? But I say I'm lucky. I'm very lucky. And then my CEO now, Michael Johnson, big Michigan fan, one time he said something, and I said, oh, I'm just really lucky, Michael. He goes, no. Luck is at the intersection, right? Do you remember this quote? Do you remember when this happened? So back, I think it was 1994, Desmond Howard was playing for Michigan. I think it was against Michigan State. Late in the game, Michigan down, driving home stadium, right? Last play of the game, sort of that Hail Mary pass, Desmond Howard catches the ball, 1 foot in bounds, touchdown, crowd goes crazy. Reporter comes up to Bo and says, Bo, that was such a lucky play. He said, lucky play? So he gets Desmond, right, soon to be the Heisman Trophy winner. He says, Desmond, come over here. He said, tell this woman what play we just ran. Oh, coach, that was 49Z red 13. Now tell this lady how often we run that play. Oh, well, coach, we run that play every single day in practice. Now, Desmond, tell this woman when we run that play in practice. Coach, that's the last play we run in practice every single day. And Bo turned to her and said, luck? I don't think so. Luck is at the intersection of hard work and opportunity, right? And preparation, excuse me. I'm not a Michigan fan. I'm a Gator. My wife's a Gator. But so thank you for welcoming me here. Thank you for the faculty and the staff, especially the staff that did such a great job getting all the bags ready and everything. And thank you to my wife and my Herbalife colleagues that I know will heckle me as I go through this. But so we'll start with Bo, and there's a few other quotes that we'll go through. But I thought we'd first talk about, what are we going to talk about, right? They always say, tell them what you're going to talk about it, and then remind them at the end, right? So we're going to go very basic with that regard. But turnarounds. When you hear the word turnaround, usually investors perk up. Hey, opportunity, right? I'm going to get in before that turnaround. But the first turnaround starts with the foundation, and the first turnaround was with me. So I'm going to give you that background, and then I'm going to go through some different turnarounds that occurred in my life, whether it was a department that I was working in, a division, a company, to give you different experiences, and especially for the students in here, okay? I hope you take some notes. I hope just a few of these are tidbits that you'll write down and say, that's pretty cool, I'm going to try that. And for the faculty or professionals, hopefully one or two of these things jingle something in your mind and say, hey, that was pretty cool. And then I'll feel like I was giving back, and then this night was meaningful to you and meaningful to myself. So with that, we'll go through this. But start with my foundation. I grew up on Long Island. I was a wrestler, yes, but I wrestled, I ran track, I played football. I was a jock. Not a stereotypical jock, but I don't think there's any high school folks in here from my school, but a jock. Was fortunate to get a wrestling scholarship, as Linda suggested. So yeah, I was one of those intense guys, maybe not wacky crazy, but had to cut weight and all that kind of stuff. But my foundation was sports, team sports, right? Family. I had a wonderful family. Five of us in the family. I'm the youngest, the only boy, so you can imagine what goes with that, right? The prince, the king, all that kind of stuff. But also the only boy, right? So the girls always gang up on the youngest and the boy. But a family of faith. My mom raised me Catholic. I was an altar boy, and that was really my core values when I grew up. Great family. We were a very traditional family. My dad was home almost every night for dinner. And this was back in the 70s and 60s when that could happen possibly. But I was very fortunate. Grew up in almost like a Mayberry RFD kind of environment. We never locked our front door. We were out on bicycles or out all day. My mom never knew where we were, what we were doing. She just knew, like a dog, I'd be home at dinner at 6 o'clock because I wouldn't miss that. But family values, and those today I carry with me. Now, we're going to go around this little circle up here, and there's a lot of things that I'm going to add to it. But at my foundation, what gives me my energy is my family, my faith, and my values. And as I make decisions, and some of my colleagues at Herbalife will probably nod and say, oh, no, I know when he makes decisions, and it always goes back to this. We at Herbalife have some core values. Generally, they're basically family values, the things that you'd want to do with your family. So that's my foundation. My dad was in the aerospace business. That got me intrigued in the aerospace business. On Long Island back in the late 60s, he was the chief engineer on the lunar module, so I grew up in all that space stuff, and taught me to dream. And that was really also very important as I was growing up. So my foundation, and my high school yearbook, if you were to find it, not on Google like this meeting was, that was my quote in my high school yearbook. Casey Kasem, if you're old enough to remember, he did the American Top 40 every week. And he had this saying at the end of every show on every weekend was, until we speak again, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. And to me, that even as a 17-year-old writing that down to put in my yearbook, I felt like that was me, right? I set goals, mostly sports goals when I was younger, and I worked really hard to achieve them, but I tried to be humble while I was doing it. So that's why I say, Linda, why am I here? But we'll go on. So as I progress, and on the right-hand side, you're going to see sort of chronologically what's going on the time. And I'm going to kind of tell you what was going on in my life at the time and how this circle starts to fill with experiences and more values are going to populate. So again, if some of these are relevant, then I've done some of my job. So a major at University of Massachusetts, a wrestler at a hockey school. So we had the worst locker room. But just do it was the phrase at the time from Nike. I graduated, and what I realized going through college, I went to college thinking, boy, maybe if I'm really good, I can maybe make the 1984 Olympic team. A dreamer, right? I used to go in my door and say, if I do 10 pull-ups every time I go through my doorway, I can be the best. I had little goals like that, little challenges. So halfway through college, I realized, you know what, I'm not that elite level. And then I started to focus on school with that same passion, focus on getting back to my faith and going back to church. So it was that combination. At the same time, a mentor came into my life, a friend, my dad's friend, who said, if you're going to be an accounting major, most of the accountants that I know really have a difficult time communicating. So why don't you do yourself a favor and minor in English, which I did. And today that was one of the best advice that somebody outside of my immediate family gave to me, again, outside the sporting world. And that carries me through today. So that was the turnaround that started to happen in me was I realized that if I wanted to expect the best, right, if when someone came on campus for an interview, if I wanted to get that interview, I had to have the best grades. I had to have the best experience. I had to be at that business evening the night before to meet that recruiter. If I didn't get on the schedule, to fight my way on, because I know they always have one slot for someone who impresses them, right? And I knew that my effort had to equal my expectations. And I play that to my kids all the time. My son is a freshman at University of Miami now, and I always tell him that. He's a kicker on their team, and I just keep saying to him, is your effort equaling your expectations? And if they're aligned, then that's one of the biggest pieces in life. Then you can be happy. But if they're not aligned, okay, that's when you see different behaviors, both in family and in business. So align those expectations, but focus and effort to me were a really big thing at this time. And for me, I felt like coming out of UMass, the world was my oyster. So as we move on, I came out of school, I tried Wall Street, didn't like it as much as I thought. It seemed like the dream place. I grew up on Long Island. I always admired the folks getting on the train, going to Wall Street. I came out into a program trading foreign currencies. I didn't like the integrity of what was going on. I didn't like some of the behaviors. Called a recruiter who interviewed me and recruited me at college, a person from United Technologies. And said, yeah, Rich, we have an opportunity in the financial management training program at Pratt & Whitney, one of the biggest divisions, but it's in West Palm Beach, Florida. It's in their government engine business. I said, I'll take it. So I found my way down to West Palm Beach, Florida, in the government engine business in a 2-year rotational program going through accounting. Now, this was 1985, 84, 85. And so think about what an accounting department looked like in a government engine business. Something called a 10 key, which probably nobody knows other than people that have my color hair. It's this big machine that sits on the side of your desk, and you're doing this all day. And out comes this little paper with totals, and more oftentimes than not, there was something wrong, and then you spend a lot of time trying to figure out which column, which we made a mistake. And then one day, about midway through, and this is a group of about 25 accountants, heads down, cranking all day long like this, right? And I'm a trainee learning from somebody. There's this white device that just happened to be on an empty desk right in the middle of the department. Big white box, big tube on the top. The first IBM PC. And it was like, there's a disease, nobody went near it. So one day I just went over and I said, figured what is this? I was curious. And this was when you had these big drives, about this big floppy drives. You actually had to stick the software in, Lotus 123, which was sort of like I don't know, like the Model T compared to today's Camaro, maybe, with Excel. So Lotus 123, you slip the software disk in, you did the things you wanted to do, and then when you wanted to save your work, you had to pull it out and put another software disk in there, big, right, and then saved your work. But the turnaround that occurred, here I am as a trainee, okay, and I'm just realizing as I'm doing all these spreadsheets and I'm looking around at a lot of people maybe 10, 15, 20 years older than me, I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And this computer just fell there, no instructions, nobody, and I just found a way to do it. And then what I started to do was my work was getting done faster. So then I started helping some of the folks around me, not the trainees that were on the program, but some of the people that were doing this day in, day out for years. So I started to impress people. I started to teach people. My feeling was, sort of back to my values, I wanted to leave my job, my department, better than when I found it. I felt like, and that sort of ingrained me in my training program. Nobody told me to do that. Somehow it just came to me in either my values, my faith, my prayers, whatever it was. And then that was my new expectation for myself. Every time I went into a job, my competition was me, not the other trainees on the program. And if I could leave this job better than I found it, then I was being successful. And I determined what that success was. Again, effort equals expectations, right? So, again, maybe lucky at the time, 1985, technology, and I was the right age, just like young people are today with the right technology, right? But that's how I started my success, and that was the initial turnaround in this department. And today, if you go there, it's all automated, right? But it started there, and that gave me confidence to do more of it. Also at that time, I'm sorry, I was sent for my MBA. Pratt & Whitney, if you achieve certain levels in the training program, they sent you for a company-sponsored MBA. And just like many of you, what a welcome experience the Executive MBA was compared to academic, undergrad, right? It was more experience, more case study, more teams, more real life to me. But the frustration was I'd come back to work and I'd still be cranking Excel spreadsheets, nobody to supervise, nobody to manage. But then I started to realize the way you can lead is you can lead by example. So what I started to do at this time was I got drafted into the financial planning and analysis group by soon to be a future mentor, didn't know it at the time. And this was sort of where a lot of the, I'll say, people who scored higher in the training program were recruited into that department, sort of in that day fast tracking. And I brought those same technology skills. But not only those technology skills of Lotus, but also then into the precursor to PowerPoint, okay? But then beyond that was, what I found was that nobody from finance really went out to the operations. We were testing rocket engines, pretty cool stuff. Endurance testing military engines, pretty cool stuff to me growing up in the aerospace business. So I started going out there and meeting people. And people were like, where are you from? Finance? And you want to know what I'm doing? And I started to realize that the way to turn this department around was the perception of the department. They were never viewed as a partner. They were viewed as the auditors, the checkers, right? All that stereotype of somebody in finance. And to me, my turnaround in this assignment was the perception of the department. I didn't realize the perception of me was changing at the time. That was when people didn't tell you you were talented, or they didn't tell you that you were being mentored, right? It was back in the 80s. That's not what that generation did. But it was happening. And it was happening because I was setting expectations, and I said, I'm going to learn as much as I can. I'm going to leave this assignment better than I found it. And that was sort of the rhythm of my business. But we turned the FP&A department around. We became business partners. We started being drafted into meetings with senior executives. Then we got assigned to all the different engine programs. And some of the colleagues at Herbalife, like that's why I'm assigned to sales and marketing, Edmund, wherever you are. And yeah, that's where it started, was I realized that business leader wants their financial and business partner. And it can't just be a financial partner, it has to be the business partner. So you got to get out there at 11 o'clock at night and watch a rocket engine test. You have to go out there and see when they break an engine down and pull the parts out. And it's dirty and grimy and everything, but if you have passion and you love it, it comes through. And then the perception changes, and then things just get kind of magical at that point in time. So the quote at the time was really back to my wife. We got married in 1987, and this was now a new balance for me. I had to think about someone other than me. And that was another turnaround from within, but also affected me on the job. Because I took that and saying, you know what, now I have to help other people more around me. Okay, and it was more about teaming and partnering to find success than just my success. So I had to work, I felt, to get other people to embrace my kind of concept of effort equals expectations. In 1989, I had the opportunity, I was recruited from Florida up to Connecticut to actually run the financial training program. Sort of my grooming in HR, if you will. So off to college campuses, meeting students, reviewing resumes. And I'll tell you, the way I started reading resumes was from the bottom. I looked at the bottom. What are your interests? What activities are you in? What clubs? What sports? Is this person a team player? Right, well, I'm recruiting for a highly competitive training program where teaming is important. Do I want someone who loves to read, play the piano, run marathons? Or do I want someone who's on the volleyball team, someone who is the manager of the basketball team, someone who played on the club soccer team? Yeah, you know where my head was going. Because you get 300 resumes and you go on campus and you interview 22 kids in an 8-hour span, there's got to be a sorting mechanism, right? And the easy one is just grades, right? Who had above a 3.5? The 300 resumes went down to 150. From 150, what's the next sort? Let's read from the bottom up. Who's a team player, right? Who had good experiences? And then I was always impressed with the person who came, and Monica came with me to several universities, the kid that came up after the presentation of the financial training program and said, Mr. Goudis, I read about this. I really want to get on the interview schedule tomorrow. And sometimes I'd say, Faye, thanks for coming up. We're full. But if you have 5 minutes right now, let's go. And that was assertiveness that I was impressed with. And several of those people got interviews back at our campus, and some of those people got onto our training program. So the message to the MBA students here, the job market is extremely difficult. Don't take no for an answer. If you don't get an interview, go find one, right? Be assertive. That leaves a lasting impression on people. Surround yourself with talent. What I realized at this point was this training program was a great bench of the young talent coming up in the business. It was an opportunity to build teams, to build the future teams, and I had the great insight into who the young talent was. But the turnaround here was turning around the whole entire program. Having been on the program, I knew if I ever had the opportunity to be that coordinator, what would I have done differently? Right? I would have listened better. I would have worked with management better to make the rotations better, the assignments more enriching and challenging. I would change the performance review process to make it more constant feedback every 3 months instead of just, hey, this is how you did at the end of 6 months. We had forced ranking. This was a brutal program. But we made a lot of changes, and most importantly, we changed the perception of the program at the universities. So I'd go to the school or I'd call up someone in the placement office and said, hey, I'm down to 22 people. Here's my list. Did I miss anybody good? And then you get that relationship, and someone says, oh, yeah, you missed Claire Burton. You got to see Claire, right? So I'd say, okay, well, make sure Claire comes to the evening presentation and come and make sure she comes up and says hello afterwards. And that's a relationship. That's changing the perception of what we were doing, right? So that turnaround here was within the division, but this is a $6 billion engine division with 44 highly talented trainees on the program, and it changed their perception and expectation of each other. At the time, Norman Schwarzkopf, I read a lot of books as I matured, really after my MBA program. It enlightened me to say, the way I can learn is not only from the people I'm working for, but I'm going to read about great leaders. And great leaders, whether they were sports people, military people, politicians. So a lot of those things that motivate me today are things that I read. And Norman Schwarzkopf, this was a big statement for him. And Colin Powell had the same thing. one of Colin Powell's great comments was when he had his first senior, I think maybe it was his first general level, and he was head of all of armed forces in Europe. And he found that his troops were being fatigued, and they weren't getting the same workouts. So he followed some of the troops home. Some of the troops, because there wasn't enough base housing, some of the troops lived off base. And because of the cost of living in Germany, some of them couldn't afford the housing that they were in with their family, so they were taking second jobs at night. And then they're coming in the morning to go work out, and they're fatigued. So his message to me was, you got to take care of your troops. If you don't take care of your troops, how are they going to take care of you? So he built new barracks, new housing on base, moved all these people on base, and it changed what was going on. And we did the same thing here. We said, you got to take care of your people, because when they feel you're taking care of them, then they're going to start to think and take care of you. And that's powerful. When you have 44 people now thinking about this training program and thinking about when I'm making decisions how to change it, they're giving me their feedback, right? With the executives that felt now a bigger buy-in to the program, college campuses that were saying, hey, you know, the GE program, yeah, it's been around a long time, but I'll tell you want to go on a program, go on this financial management training program at Pratt & Whitney. And everything started to change. So that was 1989 in Connecticut. 1991, teamwork makes the dream work. It's sort of our phrase here at Herbalife as well. But teamwork beats the individual. In 1991, I was asked to go to our overhaul and repair business. It was the warranty business at the time, so you can understand the mentality. Cost center. The talent wasn't the best because it was a cost center. They had an unsatisfactory audit from UTC. The accounting supervisor at the time was fired, and they sent Rich in to fix it. And I'm thinking, God, what did I do wrong? I thought I did a good job with this training program. Why am I getting this assignment? And what I didn't realize then, and I started to realize it in this time, was it was because they expected me to turn it around. I started to have the perception, and people knew that if Rich went somewhere, he wouldn't accept what was there. He would strive to make it even better, even if it was great. And that was my energy. So yeah, it was kind of crazy wrestler mentality, right? Your only competition is you, but it really is true. So at this time, what did I do? Well, it was first was a talent game. For years and years and years, people who didn't want to work that hard or didn't want to be in the politics of maybe the big organization all found themselves down to Southington, Connecticut in the overhaul and repair business. So that was the perception, is that was a tired team of 25 accountant people. So it was the training program, all those relationships I had, I started recruiting some of that young talent and feeding it in. And then it was aligning expectations. There was one guy, he was like the number 2 guy in the department. I used to walk around the department at 5 o'clock at night just to chit-chat, right? Because everybody's busy during the day, and that's some of the social time, which is very important to get to know people, right? Let people know that you're thinking of them. And this guy, again, back 1991, right? He'd leave his light on, and he'd sneak out a door, thinking nobody knew, or at least nobody like Rich knew, right? And so I got wise to it. I'd look out in the parking lot, his car wasn't there, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what a game. But you know, this is an adult doing this, and you're like, okay, well, what have we done wrong to make him do that? And what can I do to correct that? So the first thing was honesty, right? Back to my values, is be honest with people and lay out your expectations. And either they buy into those expectations and great things happen when that happens, okay? Or he was gonna find another train to go take a ride on, okay? And he did turn around, and we became very good friends. And when he turned it around, then he started talking to people back up in Hartford and saying, hey, things are different here. This is a really cool place now. And then all of a sudden people wanted to start coming down, and it was sort of a snowball effect. But bringing that talent in was what turned that department around. At the same time, strategically, that division was going from a cost center to a profit center. So there were people like me in engineering and quality, and we started becoming colleagues, and we started moving up together because we were turning this division around. In 1991, my daughter was born. And this was, as big as getting married was, this was just as big a step, because then I realized I had to treat my employees, my first real supervisor job, like I was treat my family, like my daughter. How could I expect so much out of people and not give so much to them? And what I realized was you have to give it first. You have to give it to get it, right? My wife always gives me this saying, God doesn't give it to you unless he knows he's going to get it through you, right? And that was this period of reckoning in and growth in me as a person and as a leader to treat my team as family. And today at Herbalife, we have, 12 to 15 employees that I've worked with at other companies on the other coast that came and followed me to Herbalife. Yeah, part of it was me, and part of it was Herbalife, but they're here today, 7 years later, or what have you, because it's all working, that chemistry. And that's what you build as you build your professional career, right? You keep building on that success. But this was very powerful. That time in my life, being a first-line supervisor and having a daughter and realizing that there's even somebody beside your wife that's more special in the world, right? And how do you balance that? But how do you make your employees feel that special? And it does come back to you. Time and time and time again, and many times you don't even know it. So what happened after that? 1996, I wound up leaving Pratt & Whitney up in Connecticut, went back to Florida. Well, did I tell you I have a very loving and supportive wife? I knew when I was going to get married, I wanted to marry a nurse. And I figured, the planner here, nurses can move around. They can work anywhere. Right? And my wife was a nurse. And it was these calculated things in my brain. It's sort of scary sometimes, but it worked. We were a partnership. Going back to South Florida allowed Monica to stop working. I became a director level, stock options, all these things that were sort of the fruits of moving up, if you will, with a company called Sunbeam, small appliance maker. Linda said, well, what was common between jet engines and blenders? I said, they spun. That was all. That was the only analogy. But no, manufacturing. I love manufacturing. I was good at cost accounting. I was a shop rat. I loved getting my hands dirty, looking at investments. But the turnaround here was the entire company. So I got into this company in 1995. An ex-GE executive was running the business, and very early on, I was director of financial planning for the corporation. Very early on, I said, boy, I think I made a mistake. Boy, I don't think this company's that well run. A lot of fiefdoms, a lot of infighting. People don't want to tell the boss the real answer. And here I am expecting to roll up numbers, roll analyses in, and be honest, right? So, man, I'm honest as the day is long, and I'm giving them the dirt. And one day we're in a meeting, and I'm beating on some people because they're just not being truthful, and I got the analysis, and they're saying, well, that's not right, and I have the analysis, and they're saying, well, that's not right, and I have the analysis, right? In that day, I used to tell people lie, numbers don't, right? And I was dead serious on that, so I was that wrestler back then. And I remember going into the restroom, and the CEO walks up next to me, and it's always uncomfortable when another guy walks up to you in the restroom, right? And he goes, hey, Rich, and he's looking at me. I'm like, don't look down, But I remember this experience because he goes, hey, you think I was too tough in there? And I said, too tough? I said, those guys wouldn't have made it out of the room if I was in your role. Swear to God. I figured, you know what, if I'm going out of here, I'm going out of here saying the right things, right? Well, sure enough, a month later, he was gone, right? I remember this night vividly. We were up for a board meeting in New York City. It was the night that TWA plane crashed. I got back to my room, and on the TV was all these white speckles. I thought it had fuzz on my TV, and it was the wreckage out on the Long Island or the ocean off of Long Island. And the next day, chainsaw Al Dunlap, fell into my life. For those of you who may not know Al, he's a big turnaround guy. The movie Wall Street 2 is out. The first Wall Street 1, right? Sir James Goldsmith was a big turnaround guy. Al was his henchman. Al was the guy that got in there and did all the doing to make the value happen. Al had turned around Scott Paper, and he dropped into to Sunbeam. I like to tell people I was 6'4" and had black hair at the time. And it was extremely demanding time. We learned a lot. But the core of the turnaround of this company was what I had done, and I'd presented to the old management team, and they didn't listen. I mean, this is simple stuff, right? Because I got out in the field, and I listened to people, and I was embraced because I had numbers and facts and analysis. So think of two businesses. We had an outdoor business and an indoor, a home business, right? Home appliances, scales, et cetera, right? So what do down in Mississippi? We press out sheet metal, and we make scales, seasonal business, and then we sort of almost close the facility. right? So it's stamping, painting, light assembly. In Neosho, Missouri, not 500 miles away, what do? We bang out gas grills, we pound them out, we paint them, we assemble them, and we ship them. So I'm not a rocket scientist, right? I always go in the room saying, I am not the smartest person in this room, so I better listen. And I just started looking at manufacturing facilities and say, well, what if we closed this facility and moved all that production to this facility? We could run this facility all year round, keep our talent, blah, 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 blah. And then all these other divisions, all these other manufacturing facilities started to have the same seasonality because they were two dramatically different businesses. Then we looked at the different facilities. This is how crazy it was. We had a corporate office in Fort Lauderdale. We had a head of international in Chicago, downtown Chicago. In Schaumburg, Illinois, an hour outside of Chicago maybe, we had the head of our household division. And then in Neosho, Missouri, we had the head of our outdoor division. Look at all that overhead, all that real estate, no sharing. Everybody had their own finance teams, all duplication. I'm thinking, well, this is easy, right? So created this plan, presented it to my CFO. He said, this is really good. You should go sit with the CEO and talk to him about it. And I did, and he didn't embrace it. So Dunlap walks into my life, and I don't know who the guy is. Never heard of him, or I never didn't really pay attention. And I'm on the way back from this board meeting in New York City, and the controller's next to me goes, man, this is going to get really good. He's all energized because he's reading all the stuff on Dunlap. He goes, things are going to be different. Well, sure enough, they were. The next day was the opening day of the Olympics in Atlanta. Most of the executives found their way to go there because vendors took them or what have you. Dunlap decides to visit the office. And he passes the CFO's office, and who's the first officer as CFO? Rich. And Rich is there. Al comes, he goes, Rob, Gal Dunlap, glad to meet you. What's your name? I'm like, Rich Goudis. He goes, where is everybody around here? I'm like, Al, it's the Olympics. Oh, fuck the Olympics, and he's like, walk me around here. So I start walking around and said, this is so-and-so. We get around and we go down to the next floor, and we had a bunch of IRS auditors in, opened the door and said, and Al, this is the IRS auditors. IRS, I hate you guys. You guys take my money. I mean, this guy was tough, right? He was tough. But what happened was, as I'm walking around, I'm telling him things. He's asking me questions. I'm giving him honesty, right? I'm pent up, right? I told management what to do. They didn't listen to me. And so I'm telling Al these things. And on Monday, he called a staff meeting of all the senior executives. We had a huge round table in this boardroom. You can go back and look at pictures of Al in this boardroom. 19 executives showed up. On Tuesday, only 2 of those executives left in the company. It was brutal. I mean, a couple of folks that work with me now, we were in there keeping track of who's going to go next, who's going to be first, right? We're young pups. Because we knew there was infighting, there was politics. He asked people, Al said, everybody come in, bring your business strategy. And boy, just one by one, they shot him down, and then they brought him right to HR and out. It was brutal. Al was brutal. He lived up to his name as Chainsaw Al. But for me, it was an opportunity to see my work fold into and affect a company, right? They did all the things that are laid out in this little analysis that, who am I to do this? But they embraced it, and we enacted a lot of that. Well, Al at the time liked to say he was a turnaround guy, but he was really a growth guy, but the reality was he was only a turnaround guy, right? Well, when the value of the stock got so high, nobody wanted to buy it, then he turned to a sale process. I'm sorry, no one wanted to buy the company. He then started to go into acquisition mode. So there was a period of time I was out of the house for like 3 weeks with 1 week worth of clothing, and we acquired Coleman, Mr. Coffee, and First Alert all at one time. But I knew at the time that this guy's values were not my values. It was the first time I could fly first class, and I would get to the airport early just to ask to be downgraded because I couldn't stand to be near this person. And that's tough. It's tough when you have a family, you have a mortgage, right? And it's grinding your stomach, like these values are not mine, this style is not mine. And that was where in my life, see through the politics, money is not happiness. Money is not happiness. Happiness to me was doing the right thing that I knew was the right thing. And was walking out of there. And it was validated 2 years later when the SEC wanted to come and talk to Rich about what happened. And the only executive that was cleared out of the senior executives was Rich, and they said, because he did the right thing. I never sold a share of stock. All right, lost millions of dollars on paper, but it was on paper. right? It was never real because what was happening wasn't really real. And that was one of those first dominoes to fall before the Enrons and all these other things. Go read about it. But it was validation to me, 38 years old at the time. I knew what was right, and it was proven what was right. But in 1998, I found my way to a great company, a company called Rexall Sundown. It was a NASDAQ 100 listed company, and it afforded me the opportunity to make that move that I was looking for. Planned and calculated, I left when I had something. But the comment here is reputation, right? A lifetime to develop it, and you can lose it in a moment by doing the wrong thing, in a moment. I had this conversation with my daughter one time where we caught her in a lie. It was almost big girl time lie, right? And I said, Sam, if you were one of my employees, I'd fire you. Not for what you did, but because you lied to me about what you did. And I don't tolerate it, because my relationships are founded in honesty and in truth. And if you work for me, it's bad news, I hate it, but I want to hear about it really fast. Faster than good news. And that's the way, one of the styles that I picked up through some of this business. So I found my way into Rexall as head of finance and head of investor relations. Did such a great job that we were acquired and merged with a company called Royal Numico. Royal Numico at the time had acquired GNC and another multi-level marketing company in Utah, and they asked me to merge all the back end and become chief operating officer for that group. And it was my financial acumen, it was my passion for the business, nutrition, I love it back from my wrestling days. But what made it successful was building the team and being a cheerleader. So what were the steps, right? We brought this division together. I looked at the best talent. Who was best between Rexall and GNC at running transportation? Okay, it was Faye. Who was the best at HR, right? Linda or Monica? Linda got the job. Didn't matter if you were GNC badged or Rexall badged. We drafted the best person. And we started to create the success of joining those two companies. It was sold a couple years later, and I found my way to Herbalife. Recruited as the CFO to take the company public. Now, there's, like I said, probably 12 to 15 folks at Herbalife today that worked with me at Rexall, some even back to Sunbeam. A couple of them are here today, so they can talk to them and validate some of these stories. But what we did at Herbalife, and I'll kind of go through a few slides here, but it was very simple. This is a business that had a CEO pass away at an untimely age, had 5 CEOs between the founder and our current CEO. You can imagine the state of the business when that new CEO came in. And I thought this was very relevant from Steve Jobs. This was his 2005, part of his 2005 address to the Stanford graduating class. And this is what I would say to the students that are in this room, right? When you get your diploma next year, write your goals on the back. What are your 5-year goals and your 10-year goals? And just mount it. Don't look at them. But have goals. And then in 5 years, take that diploma off the wall and read it and see if you're on track, or you need course correction or direction, right? But being happy, that should be your biggest goal, whatever that means. And it's your assessment of what that is, right? So Herbalife, founded as a weight loss company, way before its time, way before this thing called global obesity. Today, the intersection of health and wealth. So what did we do to turn this company around? Remember, $7 stock in December of 2004, $55 today. Growing in some of the most difficult economic times, but we built a great team. A lot of the folks came from Disney. A lot of the folks came from Rexall. Michael Johnson, our CEO, would call it the D-Rex team. When we went out, remember Frank, we went out on investor relations meetings, the D-Rex team. I was building a great team, and I'll give you an example of the culmination of some of this. So Frank Lamberti was in the room. I had known Frank since '98. I went to Herbalife, and we were doing our road show, taking the company public, And one of our investors said, who's going to run investor relations? And our CEO turned to me for the answer, and I knew he didn't want to hire somebody. And I turned to the investor and said, well, what do you think we should do? And they said, well, we think you should get your own IR person. And I said, okay. So I went home, back to Florida for Christmas. I met Frank a couple days before Christmas. 2 weeks later, he was in his office in Century City, Herbalife badge. The power of friendship, the power of trust, the power of opportunity. And Vanita, who's here as well, followed very shortly after that. Personal travel all over the world to make sure our accounting systems are right. But you build from a team, and you draft them, just like you see coaches do in football. And you look back and you go back 20 years ago and you say, hey, look at all those coaches that are now big-time coaches. They were on the Notre Dame squad, or they were on the Oklahoma squad, and they all work together, right? And then look at where they are today. And then they draft and they pulled their talent with them. So build your team. We call it Herbalife Build Your Downline. Our distributors in the room, thank you for being here. Build your downline. That's your strength. Not your upline, although it can be motivating and everything, but your downline is your strength. That's your foundation. The second was restore confidence. Restore confidence in our distributors. They saw the leader, their passionate leader, pass away. Restore confidence in the employees. Restoring confidence with investors. Our private equity investors first and foremost, but then Wall Street. There were a lot of people, we went on a road show, and they yelled at us for going private in 2000, like, whoa, I wasn't even here. I was at Rexall. But some people at Fidelity came in the meeting just to yell at us and then leave. Because they were just pent up. They were so upset that the company went private years ago. But restoring confidence, don't underestimate the power of confidence. That creates momentum. And in our business, we talk about direct selling being a momentum business. With momentum, everything starts to work, whether it's employee morale, distributor morale. Establish a mission, vision, and values. Loosely we say they're family values at Herbalife. You would look at our values and say, those are all things my mother told me to do, and have fun. We have fun in our values. But we all carry our badges. They have mission, vision, values. You go in our office, mission, vision, values. Our performance review process, our recruiting criteria all tie back to our mission, vision, values. And people who we promote, people who we think are high potential, they're living our mission, vision, and values. And they know it. And other people know it. And that's why they move up, amongst other criteria. Develop a business strategies and the metrics to measure it. You have to paint the vision with a big brush. Our CEO dreams huge, huge. And that's one of the biggest reasons we're successful. Our founder was like that, and then through 5 CEOs, we didn't have that. And then he came in and painted this big brush. And today, with the global obesity epidemic, with people looking for part-time income around the world, full-time income, people moving up the socioeconomic ladder in many, many markets around the world, we feel like we're in this Camelot phase. And look at our financials. Look at our financials. Volume, which is currency, X currency, X price, just pure volume, unit volume. Look at that chart. Net sales, look at the trajectory. EPS, basically the bottom line, and then stock price. And then with the little squiggly line is the market. So I wanted to end on this because this is validation that we as Herbalife are doing the right thing, that the turnaround did work at Herbalife. But as I started out, the Herbalife started within. Here are my top 10, sort of ending on a sports theme, if I can. I didn't know how to put the sound in there. I should have asked somebody way younger than me how to put the sports theme in there. But number one, and Linda said it, outwork everybody. That's what I did when I was a wrestler. My philosophy in wrestling is I am not losing in regulation. There's no way I'm losing in regulation. People were stronger than me. People were faster than me. Okay, always. I was never the strongest on the mat. Most of the time, the fastest, but my feeling was my endurance will kick anybody. And if I'm going to lose, I'm losing in overtime. And that's what I took into work. I outworked everybody. People would say, Rich is the first car in at night, one of the last cars to leave. Right? But things don't come to me as quickly. I know it, so I have to work and outwork everybody. But when you go up in the organization, don't think for a minute that other people don't see that. And that starts to set a temperament in the business and a rhythm in the business. And that's powerful. Second is be self-confident. And it's probably What's more important is the next one is, and don't work for someone who's not self-confident. Because if someone that you're working for is not self-confident, you know what? They're not going to bring you to an important meeting, even though you did all the work. Remember that, young people, because you're going to get to do some really great work. You want to work for someone who's so self-confident in themselves that they're going to say, hey, Frank or Vanita, come to the meeting. I want you to present this. My boss knows what I can do, right? People at Herbalife, when we're in a big meeting, I let my people speak. We're going to have a board meeting next week. My senior vice presidents are going to speak. The board knows who I am. It's more important for me, for the board to have confidence that Rich has a strong downline and that they know what they're capable of doing, right? So those two really go together. And I'm telling you, if you're working for an insecure person, find another path very quickly, because you'll work at a very precious time in your life and you're not going to get a lot out of it. Pick the right partner in life. Huge success. Huge success in that, and I'm blessed to have that. But whatever that is, wherever that is, pick that right partner. Because once you are a partner, that is the foundation of your life and your family. And if you have a wife or a spouse that doesn't want to move and that prevents you from having opportunity, boy, how are you going to feel about that, right? And that happened. We came back from our honeymoon. One of my mentors, he got promotion to Hartford. He called me and said, hey, Rich, why don't you come up? Basically trying to steal me up to Connecticut. And I'm like, wow, what a cool. Mergers, acquisitions for all of United Technologies. This is pretty cool. I said, Monica, let's go. She goes, no, we just got back from our honeymoon. I'm not going. But she promised me, she goes, but when you get the next call, we'll go no matter what. And 2 years later, another mentor called me, and off to Connecticut we went, and Monica kept her promise, and that was extremely important. We wouldn't have done it, and I wouldn't be here today without that. So that is absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. Treat your employees like your family. I hit that, and I will, if there's anything that you leave here with, because this is a multiplier. If you have a large staff, if people know you care about them, they're going to care about you. If they know what's important to you, they're going to watch out for you. They're not going to let you step on landmines. And in my company, in 78 markets with 5,000 employees, 2.5 million distributors, can't tell you until next week what that number really is when we have our earnings released, but you have to have the trust that people are watching your back, because you can't watch everything, right? You can keep a pulse on some things, but I expect people to walk in my office and say, hey, heard this, saw that, this, that, right? And we're all connected with email, so that it flies a lot faster. But treat your employees, and it's going to come back tenfold. And if you don't believe it, just try it, sample it, and see what happens. But that means you got to make that investment. When I go on the road, I meet with employees in the market, let them know how special they are and that we care, even if it's just a lunch, okay? Know what career you want. You're going to get a lot of opportunities, right? You may say, oh, it's a tough market. It is a tough market. But if you're talented and you're charismatic and you really fight for that interview and you get that job offer, but keep looking up. Make sure that you're doing what you want to do. I love nutrition. Right? A few years ago, before I took the Herbalife position and I had a non-compete, I got a call from a company that makes cigars. And cigars were in vogue in the early 2000s. To go up and be their CFO. And Monica and I we were vacationing in Disney, and I said to Monica, I can't do that. I can't work for a company that I don't believe in, right? So know what career you want, know what company you want. Work in an industry that you really enjoy. Sort of go together. Have integrity. As I said earlier, it takes a lifetime to build it, and you can lose it in a moment. And that moment can be, I sent something FedEx. It was personal, and I didn't write a check back to the company. And somebody saw it, and that somebody tells 10 people, these executives, and down it goes. We have a very tight line of integrity in our company. Maybe some people would argue too tight, but when you've got 5,000 people in 78 markets, and you have FCPA, when I was a CFO, you had Sarbanes-Oxley, and there was jail time, you wanted to make sure that thing was really puckered up. And we would have controller meetings, a room is this big, and I would tell the controllers the first thing is, first off, The only person in this company that can fire you is me. And you're hearing that from me. Your general manager who may have hired you in country X or country Y, they might want to fire you, but they can't unless they get my approval. But I don't need anybody's approval if you're doing the wrong thing. And that was confidence to them, right? And integrity. They knew my integrity. And when we got back channels that, hey, this is happening or that's happening, all of a sudden, just internal audit would show up at somebody's office someday just looking for, we're just here on a routine investigation or a routine audit, and then they'd find the thing, and all of a sudden, somebody's gone out of the company, and it's all sort of done quietly to protect the person. But that built confidence that the integrity of this management team was the highest. And that's our foundation at Herbalife, is our integrity. Seek work-life balance. Without it, you'll melt. It won't be as enjoyable. The flowers won't smell as great. And part of the journey is sharing your talents with other people. Like I said, there's a way better speakers than me to be doing this, but to me, it felt like this was given back. And if people are taking some notes like I've seen, and one or two of those things work, God bless you, and I'm really glad. But find that balance in life. You're going to be a better person. You're going to have more energy. You're going to have a skip in your step, and you're going to feel good. And then last one, and it was funny, Linda said this to me, and we were in the interview earlier, be happy. Or I guarantee you, they will find somebody else to do what they want you to do. Attitude reflects leadership. You saw it as one of the quotes. One of my favorite quotes. Attitude reflects leadership. So if you're not getting it, look in the mirror. That's the first place to look when things aren't working. And that turnaround then has to come from that person looking back at you in the mirror. And even if it means you have to change as part of that turnaround, hear that message. Don't be afraid of it. Pursue it. Run after it. In my wrestling days, right? Don't lose it. It's a message. It's a message from God. It's a message from whoever. But the turnarounds always come from within. I guarantee it. Because if you don't feel it, you won't participate in it. If you don't have it, you won't lead it. And that's what's exciting about business. If it was doing the same thing every day, would you really want to go do it every day? But if you could dial up the notch every day, make things more exciting every day, well, that's the environment I want to work in. And I hope the people that you speak to at Herbalife say, that is the environment we have at Herbalife. And not just because we're rich, but because I'm blessed to have peers that buy into that. We have a Camelot at Herbalife. I hope you see it in the numbers, and you see it from one of the executives tonight. So thank you very much. I appreciate the time, and I'll leave with my favorite quote of my life, which is, dream, right? But keep your feet on the ground, but keep reaching for those stars. Keep it all in perspective. Thank you.
So Frank, you've worked with Rich at like 3 companies and known him for many, many, many years. So he said we could find you later and ask you what you thought about what he said. So we're going to let you share with us what your experience has been, just a little bit about working with Rich.
Okay. So I jotted down a few comments as Rich was speaking because he was triggering a lot of memories for me. But when I heard Rich was speaking tonight, I had to run down here just in case anybody thought that what was on PowerPoint was just words on PowerPoint, to let you know that it's authentic and it's true. I met Rich, as he said, in 1998. I was 26 years old, and I remember walking into his huge office, big double doors. I was very intimidated. My knees were rattling. And he stopped, and he made me feel really comfortable and made it very clear that he wanted to hear what I had to say. And I knew from that moment on that this was going to be a great relationship. And while I might not have been the guy to sit down at the new technology box or computer, we had just launched new software at that company. And everybody was used to writing general ledger reports and all these different types of things. And he said, no, we're going to sit Frank down. He's going to learn this new way of doing things. And at that time, it was a multiple dimensional database, which was a new concept back then. Since then, I've had the opportunity to work with Rich for several years. I've watched him become, the Vice President of Finance, the CFO, the COO, and it's just been incredible how many lives, that you've touched through your leadership. And what's remarkable about Rich is he always challenges you to do things that even you don't think you can accomplish. He never tells you, what you want to hear, but he tells you what you really need to hear, and that's really been something that I've held close to me. He inspires people to do things and doesn't realize it, which is pretty amazing. And, I've watched him raise 2 children with Monica's great help and support. I've watched him turn around departments, turn around companies, and share in that great benefit with everybody who helped him do it. So I'm not only a better corporate professional for having known Rich, but I'm a better person. So Rich, thanks for your leadership. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of many of my colleagues here at Herbalife that it's been a real pleasure to have you in our lives. So thank you.
Thanks, Frank.